Okay. Ho one, ho two, ho 1, 2, 3. Election Battlegrounds 2019 with a map.
I feel we should have Dad's army arrows, don't you? Maybe not.
So, Robert, this election is going to be a wild ride. We've invented a wild ride for ourselves this morning because I'm going to attempt to draw the United Kingdom and then we're going to map the battlegrounds for the election. Is that okay?
I've seen you practicing your maps, and all I can say is so far it's fantastic.
Zip it. Okay. Right, this, believe it or not, represents East Anglia, Kent, the Southwest, Wales. That's Great Britain.
Yeah.
And here's Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
No, it's really good. I like the chef's hat particularly.
So, this election is very complicated. Potentially the era of kind of national swing telling you the whole story is over. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have some regional fights. So let's try and explain what's going on. We've got the usual red on blue fight. Mm-hmm. Would you like to take the Conservative pen?
I'll take the Conservative pen.
And the first battleground that's been identified has been what's being called the Red Wall, which is Labour-held seats in that kind of a shape.
Yeah, you can actually take it all the way across to some extent. But
OK, all right, let's do that. So that's a key battleground. What, you want me to do that as well?
Could be.
OK, let's just do that.
OK, yeah, Red Wall. Yeah.
That's the Red Wall, all the way from the Vale of Clwyd over to the northeast coast. And these are seats that the Tory party thinks it needs to win to gain a majority.
Yeah. And this is going to be one of the most annoying phrases, and we're going to hear this all through the Red Wall, which is, of course, not a wall at all, but more a sort of set of crazy paving or something like that. There are spots all over the place. It comes down to the Midlands in parts as well. And these are seats, essentially, all over the place with wildly different demographics that the Conservatives think they've got a chance of taking. Their Labour seats. And when we talk about the Red Wall, we're mostly talking about seats that the Conservatives have never held.
Right.
Not held in modern memory.
So it's traditional Labour territory.
And some of them, are really quite surprising. Former mining seats, some of the Derbyshire areas, Bolsover, for example, Dennis Skinner's seat, famously for God knows how many years. Tories think they've got a real chance. So there are places like that. Also up towards Sheffield, you've got places where you just do not think of the Conservatives having a shot, where the numbers from the last election say if they got the same swing this time that they got last time, then they've got a good chance.
So crucially, that's actually a continuation of the May strategy in the 2017 election to try and take working class towns off Labour because of the Leave vote.
Well, that's the theory.
OK.
That's the theory. Yeah. We've talked about this before, but, the last election, Theresa May, for all the things that she got wrong, she got 42% of the vote. Yeah. That's a big number.
Well, let's put that over here, shall we?
In most elections, that's a winning number. And she squeezed the UKIP vote, as it was then, we'd call it the Brexit Party now, she squeezed that vote as much as you could probably squeeze it to get that. In fact, one of the reasons why it was so close in the election is because the price of squeezing that was consolidating the anti-Leave vote, as it were. But there's not a lot of spare meat in some of these seats for them to squeeze. So they've actually got to go and get Labour votes. They can't do it by squeezing the Brexit Party again. They've got to get angry Labour voters. It's a different proposition.
So the complicating factor, which you've already alluded to, is the Brexit Party and where they stand. And so can I do a sort of dabble of Brexit Party?
Yes, OK.
I'll do a dabble of Brexit Party here, because if they stand in these seats, they could take a percentage off the Tory vote, because there may be traditional Labour voters who can bring themselves not to vote for Jeremy Corbyn this time, but can they totally bring themselves to vote for the Tories, their ancient enemy, in coalfield seats, former coal mining towns? Do they really want to vote for the party of Mrs Thatcher?
So I did a bit of research beforehand, that's why I got my phone out, looked at a number of constituencies, and some of them are quite telling, where the Brexit party vote can be the difference. And there are quite a lot of seats, some held by the Tories already in the Northamptons or Milton Keynes, some like Wolverhampton, South West, where a couple of thousand votes for the Brexit Party will be the difference between victory and defeat in those seats. And I think actually when you look at the big picture of the whole election, obviously number one is Labour v Tory, as always. Yeah. But the three things that really are going to determine the outcome of this election are, A, the turnout, because 2017 saw more people voting in most constituencies than 2015, and that accounts for quite a lot of the changes.
Well, that, of course, is off the back of a 70% turnout in the Brexit referendum the year before, which
Exactly.
boosted the numbers of
And people
participation.
felt motivated. But I mean, take a seat like Warwick and Leamington, somewhere around here.
Oh, where exactly, Robert? Would you like to say where? No, okay, broadly.
Well, I mean, if you tell me where the other parts are, I'll tell you where it is in relation to them.
Can I pick out one?
Go on then.
I think Hartlepool is sort of here.
Okay.
So there, for
All right.
example, Richard Tice is a very high-profile member of the Brexit Party.
Yeah.
Is standing in a traditional Labour town where it's quite a big ask to get people to go Tory, right? So that's quite a good example.
It is really interesting because Nigel, I believe you. Nigel Farage has said he thinks the Brexit Party will take more votes off Labour than off the Conservatives. All expert opinion says the opposite, that for every 2 votes it takes of the Conservatives, it'll take 1 off Labour. But there are places, and these sort of places, where it's undoubtedly true that there was a chunk of Brexit Party vote which was there for the taking, and it wouldn't go to the Conservatives. So it's not a completely false point. And if they targeted really carefully, it could make a difference. And there are some seats where they've been very, very strong. Stoke-on-Trent is one, back down to Dagenham and Rainham is another, where this vote matters. We're going to come back to Warwick and Leamington in a minute, because it's an interesting constituency.
Well, we're just agreeing that they're a disruptor anyway. It's a massive disruptor, the Brexit Party, coming into those seats.
That's a seat where the majority, Labour currently hold it, majority about 1,200. The number of people who voted in the last election went up considerably, but the Brexit Party could make a real difference because there is a significant, white working class vote in there. On the other hand, there's also a really large student vote. So it's the kind of place where the Brexit could make a difference, and also where the Liberal Democrats could make a difference because their vote got squeezed. And I think the big issue is how much can the Conservatives squeeze the Brexit Party, how much can Labour squeeze the Liberal Democrats? Because either of those parties start doing well, it's very bad news for their respective larger, brother or sister, as it were.
Yeah. So I want to come on to the Lib Dems because I want to talk about this battleground here, which at the moment, the map of the south of England, with the exception of London, so let's just bracket off London. I mean, this is really Tory. When you look at it, it's absolutely blue as you like the whole way down. And this is going to be a hugely important target area for the Lib Dems. I mean, affluent commuter zones all round London, bits of the south coast where they previously held a lot of seats, that's right. And those are moderate Tories put off by Brexit, they think, in enough numbers to secure quite a few seats here. And even down in the southwest, which used to be strong Liberal territory, but which has the complicating factor that it's quite Levy, and where the Lib Dems lost their crucial second place after the coalition years. But so this is going to be a really, really, really tight fight between the Lib Dems and the Tories. And there, what you were alluding to, how much can the Lib Dem vote squeeze? In these seats, it's going to be how much can the Lib Dems squeeze the Labour vote down.
Because, I mean, in most of these seats, Labour is still in second place. Lib Dems only have 38 second places across the whole country.
I would like to stop you there because I would like to say that you're assuming that the 2017 election is the baseline.
Yes.
And it really isn't, because since 2017, the Lib Dems who were still on life support have come back to life, and they are the challengers this year, even though they were not the challengers in 2017.
But isn't the greater risk that actually it's not clear? If you live in quite a lot of these seats, you're not clear who the challengers are. If you live in the Bournemouths or places like that, actually, the Lib Dems can tell you that they have a better chance of winning it, but the facts say that in 2017 Labour were second in whatever seat it was, and therefore the greater risk is the fact they fight each other to a standstill and the Tories keep all of them.
So happily for the Lib Dems, they are kind of in alliance with the polling industry in a weird way, because the polling industry has been trying to reinvent its methods since 2017 and seems to be on board, in a sense, for the Lib Dem message, which is that don't look at the last general election, look at what's happened in recent months, because the Leave versus Remain divide in the country is motivating people's vote more than those traditional allegiances which you still saw in 2017. Anyway, so this is a really important sort of second battleground, and because the Tories know they're going to lose some of these seats here to the Lib Dems, that's why they've got to gain some of these seats up here, right? So it's all interrelated.
But I think also it's very easy when we talk about elections, we all love things like the Northern Strategy or the Red Wall. Actually, there are...
We don't have a name for this one, but anyway.
No.
Measles.
There are about just under 40 seats that the Tories have held in recent memory, but they don't hold now. I think it was 35, 37, something like that. and some of them are quite marginal, and some of them could easily fit. And they're all over the country. There's some in Wales, the Vale of Clwyd. In London, you've got places like Battersea, as I said, Warwick and Leamington, Wolverhampton, South East. And I slightly wonder whether, in all of our journalistic interest in big themes and big concepts, actually, it's places like that dotted all over the country where this election will really win. Battersea is a good example.
Yeah.
Battersea, I think.
Well, that's good. Let's move to London, because London's really interesting anyway. So London, in recent years, has been a very Labour city.
Very. But we've seen opinion polls recently which suggest that it's nothing like as Labour as it was. And Labour have got some unusual wins at the last election. Kensington's a really good example.
Yes.
Very, very narrow win. Could easily lose it. Lib Dems have now got Sam Gyimah, who was a Conservative, so they're going to put a stronger challenge in there. Who's he going to pull votes from, Labour or the Tories? It's not clear.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't take a lot to pull that seat off of Labour. Battersea's interesting. I pulled this one up. So Battersea's a seat the Tories held in 2015, I think. They lost it at the last election. The majority it's a little over 2,500. But the Lib Dem vote in the last election was 4,400. It was one of the places where the Lib Dems didn't actually take a complete battering. They began to eke their way back. If that Lib Dem vote creeps up again, that's mostly going to come from Labour, I'd have thought, and that lets the Tories back in. It's a fascinating dynamic for the Tories and the Lib Dems, because actually they need the Liberal Democrats to do well to win the seats thereafter. But obviously they start to do too well, it becomes a problem.
So
they've got a vested interest in a Lib Dem surge.
That's a very urban phenomenon and in very particular seats, isn't it? But it makes it really interesting to watch, because it means in a lot of London, there's all three parties in play.
But a lot of these seats are, if not urban, they're suburban, they're quite well held. Derby North, the seat that Chris Williamson held, that was quite recently a Tory seat. Again, the Lib Dem vote, the Brexit Party vote, how that plays out could make an enormous difference. And these are not actually poor areas for the Main. These are places with lower than national average unemployment, quite high owner-occupiers. These are the kind of seats that the Tories traditionally were going after, and they're not, you know, the red wall notion.
But the other thing I think is really interesting about this, and where you get these three-way fights, you'll have... Well, there are very bad relations nationally between the Lib Dems and Labour, and they're not able to replicate the thing that worked as the anti-Tory surge during, for example, the 1990s, where it was quite clear, and the parties were happy to reinforce on the ground, in a sense, if you want to vote against the Tories, we're your best bet here, and there'd be non-aggression pacts nationally. That sort of nod and a wink to tactical voting is going to be really difficult this time between Labour and the Lib Dems because of their divides on the Brexit strategy, principally.
One of the nice clarifying things of this election is that all the parties really do hate each other.
Yeah.
There's no fakery about it.
That's true, that's true. Except I was going to come on to the fact that the Lib Dems have also managed to sign up the Green Party. What should we use for Green? Should we use this one? How about Green for Green? And the Lib Dems and the Green Party and Plaid Cymru.
Who are also green.
Who are also green, confusingly. Let's do two shades of green in a nice little mess. Look, I'm going to do a little kind of green and plaid rainbow here. There's one Green MP at the moment down in Brighton, Caroline Lucas. Lib Dems, Green and Plaid Cymru are trying to replicate what they're calling the Remain Alliance, which secured a Welsh seat for the Lib Dems in a by-election earlier this year. That may not be insignificant, because it's 60 seats where they've agreed to stand down for each other to give a clear anti-Brexit message.
I gave a quick look at those 60 seats. We haven't had time to really go into them. But it looks like quite a good deal for the Liberal Democrats.
Yes.
And not much of a good deal for the others. The Greens, I think, have a shot at the Isle of Wight as well as the one seat they've got. So that's one that they might be glad of, this deal. The Plaid Cymru options, they don't look fantastic. None of them look gift seats. The Lib Dems have done quite well in this list, because they've either got seats where they have a real shot, or they hold it,
or a shot at getting a really good second place, because if you're the third party in a two-party system, whether you're seen as the challenger, as we were discussing earlier, is really, really crucial. And of course, if this general election delivers another hung parliament, we might have to have another election really not too far down the track. So actually for the Lib Dems that becomes really significant, where you can be the absolutely acknowledged challenger for a potential another shot at it.
And that was the cataclysm of the 2015 election. Not only that they lost all those MPs, but they lost, 200 odd second places.
Yes.
It was a major deal for them.
And for example, down in the southwest, those Lib Dem second places, Labour leapfrogged them. So they don't want that to happen again. Right, shall we discuss Scotland?
Yes. I was going to say one other thing just about the Lib Dems. I mean, it's more of a national point, but I think I've been very struck by this over the last few years. Jo Swinson, the Lib Dem leader, when she's been talking and she's been pressed on the usual Lib Dem murder question, well, which side are you going to put in power if it's a hung parliament?
Yeah.
And it's quite a difficult one for her because she's obviously not going to put Boris Johnson in power. She's obviously not going to back a Brexit deal because the party wants to revoke Brexit. The logical thing is an alliance with the more Remainy Labour Party. But she's been completely explicit that she could not put Jeremy Corbyn in power. So explicit that I don't see a way around it, really. And that's crucial since she's going after a lot of Tory seats, and that bothers Tory voters. Now, there's a bit of wiggle room in that she could acquiesce to others putting Jeremy Corbyn in power and maybe just wouldn't bring him down in a vote of confidence. But I think at some point she's going to come under quite a lot of pressure because if it's obviously you're not going to put the Tories in power and you insist you're not going to put the Labour in power and nobody thinks you're actually going to win the election, then what the hell are you actually going to do and what's the point in voting for you? It might be a reasonable voter question. And if you want a referendum, there's only one way you can go in this. So what the hell are you going to do? And how are you going to depose Jeremy Corbyn if that's your price? A, when Labour's lost its deputy leader, and B, when he might not wish to go.
So my answer to that would be that if you've put all your eggs in the anti-Brexit basket, which the Lib Dems have done, then you just have to stick to the line and say, well, we'd support moves to block Brexit, but we will not prop up a Corbyn government. But actually, if you're in a...
meaning what?
Well, we'll have to see, but it's carefully
worded. We won't bring it down, but we won't do anything to help it.
But look, we need to get on to Scotland, right, which actually is linked to your point because it's... The Tory party in this election is trying to get a majority to push through their Brexit deal. As you have written, what the Labour Party needs to do is just stop that Tory majority, and it's much harder for them to actually get a Labour majority. And that is partly because of Scotland, because Labour used to deliver a kind of industrial number of Labour seats. In Scotland, that used to be a wheelbarrow full of Labour seats.
I want to talk about Wales before we finish.
Let's
go back to Scotland.
But so Scotland, I think we're going to have to use black for the SNP. Having once been red, Scotland is now pretty much SNP territory, right? There's no possibility of a Jeremy Corbyn majority being delivered by seats in Scotland anymore. So that's why we're into this potential hung parliament conversation. And then the SNP is very important because the SNP, in exchange for their second independence referendum, would support a Corbyn government, even a very short-term one.
Which supports it regardless.
Yeah, but it takes the pressure off the Lib Dems to a certain extent, I would argue. But anyway, let's talk about Scotland because from London, it's tempting to see the SNP as just masters of all they survey, north of the border. But of course, they've been in government for a long time in Edinburgh, so they're actually defending a government record. And there are still a lot of Scots, half of Scots, who aren't in favour of independence, even given Brexit. So that's tougher for them than we think.
And it's also worth remembering, although we all think of Scotland as the greatest Remain enclave, possibly apart from London, is it still a third of Scotland voted for Brexit? So it's not like there are no leavers in Scotland. Now,
we've got, 13 Tories at the moment in Scotland?
13 Tories. Now, at the election before last, the SNP cleaned up, I think, got 56 of the 59 seats. They totally wiped out everybody. At the last election, the Tories came back, and the reason is because Scotland is being buffeted by two existential issues rather than one. It's got Brexit and it's got independence. And the Conservatives became the home of the anti-independence vote. They did really well. They had a very charismatic leader in Ruth Davidson, which helped, and it pulled them up to 13 seats. And that was the difference in Theresa May being able to carry on and not. Labour, I think, is on 7 seats now. And actually, I think Labour is even more at risk in Scotland, the Conservatives. When you talk to Labour people, they talk about maybe the one seat of Ian Murray in Edinburgh South being the one they could hold. It's got a massive majority. But they're fearing total wipeout in Scotland.
So they're all vulnerable, both red and blue, vulnerable.
And I think the Tories, the best case scenario you hear from any Tories is that number goes down to about 7 or 8. And the worst case is it goes down to 1 or 0. So the Tories are very vulnerable, but they may be able to cling on quite well. I'm not sure Boris Johnson plays brilliantly in Scotland, but as you said, where the SNP picks up seats, it will as much be because Labour is losing them as the Conservatives. So in a sense, in terms of the final numbers, it doesn't make that much difference because every one of those 7 seats that goes to the SNP column is a seat that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have to try and be the largest party in a coalition government.
This little orange blob here is Joe Swinson's seat in the suburbs of Glasgow, because also in Scotland it's a four-way fight with the Lib Dems hoping to pick up a couple of extra seats and defend seats like Joe Swinson's.
So it's a very hard place to call a lot of the time, but you have to assume that the SNP are going to have a good night when it comes to election day. But the difference between a good night and a great night is, I think, up for grabs. If they start getting into the 50s, great night for them. If they only make gains of 7, 8, 9 seats, not quite so good. So Scotland, very interesting. But I just want to talk about Wales, if I may.
Yeah.
You want to say something else?
No, go for it. You want to talk about Wales?
So Scotland, it's in play, very much so. But the general tone of Scotland is understood. Wales is more interesting because Wales has been run by the Labour Party forever, basically. It's still got 28
seats. The valleys, it's heartland, it's industrial, working class heartland for the Labour Party.
It's got 28 seats there. It's way more than anybody else. I think the Tories have got 6 or 7. Libs a couple, or is it one? One, okay. And Plaid Cymru have got a couple.
The Libs used to have this kind of Methodist, non-conformist tradition in Wales, but that's like in the southwest, that's falling away.
Now, the Tories think that Wales is really fertile territory for them. Yeah. They think they can make real inroads there. Wales voted for Brexit, let's not forget that. They think that Labour can really, really be pushed back there. They've got 7 or 8 target seats. Again, ones they've held before, sometimes like the Vale of Clwyd, where they're going for it.
Here, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right,
it's
particularly
North Wales. Yeah.
So this is a place where the political landscape, both of Wales and of the country, can be reshaped. If Labour is pushed back meaningfully here, it has knock-on consequences all over the place. And it's not really going to be pushed back by Plaid Cymru, I'd suggest. It might get a bit of pushback from the Liberals, but in the deal they've just done, in their Remain alliance, there's 3 seats they've targeted, and I think one of them they already hold. The Tories are the ones who could do damage here, and I think they're putting quite a lot of their hopes on getting those big gains in Wales, pushing Labour back. And then, of course, you have this interesting... Supposing they take 7 or 8 seats off Labour there, 7 seats off Labour go to the SNP up there. Now Jeremy Corbyn's lost 14 seats already, and he's down from 260 to 246. A couple of other losses here and there. It's actually becoming quite difficult at that point to see how he does form that hung parliament. And so the Tories, if they're going to stop him, and obviously the majority is the simple thing, but also the more you can push Labour back, the more its numbers start to fall, even if it's still got a theoretical hope of a coalition. Yes. It's begun to look weaker and weaker and weaker.
And that brings me to my concluding question is, what is the definition of success on the night for the Labour Party? Because in 2017, by having a surprise recovery in their national poll rating and taking a lot of seats off the Tories and actually depriving May of her majority, they have forevermore tried to say, we won the 2017 election, even though they didn't. No. And I wonder whether it'll be another night like that. But there's a sort of window of claiming success by denying the Tories a majority, and then there's quite clearly not doing well enough, in which case, I would argue, the Jeremy Corbyn leadership may be in trouble because he will have lost twice.
I think that's exactly right. And I think one of the really interesting things about this election, which is different from a lot of previous ones, is that actually both the contenders to be Prime Minister are really very well known to the public. It's quite unusual. Normally there's at least one who the voters are only really taking a proper look at for the first time during the election. Last time it was true of both of them. They didn't really know Jeremy Corbyn. What they knew of him they didn't like, and so he came as a pleasant surprise to a lot of voters. They didn't really know Theresa May. They thought they liked her, and then when they got a closer look, a lot of them decided they didn't. Yes. And so actually, but this time, you've got 2 exceptionally well-known candidates, and the voters have probably fairly fixed views of them already. So I think there's less scope for that bit of the shock. But I think you're right. I think if Jeremy Corbyn cannot get himself into Downing Street this time, he's lost. He got away with it last time for the reasons exactly that you describe, and because even though Labour didn't quite win, the Tories very obviously lost. This time I don't think that's going to work. If Boris Johnson is still in number 10 on December the 13th, then Labour has lost and Jeremy Corbyn has lost.
And they'll be hell to pay.
Done.
Yeah.
That'll be my...
OK, well, I think we've won.
Yep, I think it's clear. Remind me where that was again.
I think you were trying to tell me where Warwick was, actually, Robert.
Yes.
So, anyway. Yeah, over to you next time then. Okay. You think you can do better?
Oh, no, I definitely can't do better.